Here's a table of UK house prices since records began. There isn't a single 10-year period prices have dropped. But here's the thing, that's an average. So some areas over the last 10 years, prices have actually increased by over double to 119%. But other areas where prices have dropped 15%, which is not so good. In this video, I'm going to take you through the areas that have seen the biggest increases and the lowest increases in prices, as well as one area in the UK that's seen prices drop in the last 10 years. I'll also explain how you can protect yourself from falling prices, even if you buy today and prices collapse tomorrow. And finally, make sure to watch till the end, because I'll also share how you should, in reality, be aiming to not only double your money every 10 years, but really double it every few. Firstly, let's look at this table that shows how house prices have increased at differing rates across the UK over the last 10 years. As you scroll through, you can see there are a lot of different areas, 375 of them to be exact, and there are some big differences between the growth in different areas. Of all of these, there are only 16 areas where house prices have actually doubled on average in the last 10 years. That is 16 out of 375 areas, or in other words, 4.3% of areas on this table. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I thought house prices doubled every 10 years, check out one of my videos where I disprove that. House prices actually increased about 70% in the last 10 years, which is still pretty good. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about a 70% increase in 10 years. But if you want to buy in those top 10 areas in the UK that have seen the highest price rises, here they are. If you bought a property in these areas and you held on to it, on average, you would have doubled your money in the last 10 years at least, which would have outperformed the UK's average of a 70% increase. But what's scary is if you bought in the bottom 10 areas of the UK, rather than doubling your money, you would have made about 20 to 35%. And in one case, the city of Aberdeen, you would have seen prices drop on average 15%, which is just painful for anyone in that situation. The reason the city of Aberdeen has seen house prices struggle so much over that period is because the main industry that supports that whole area is the oil and gas industry. And because that sector has really struggled in the area over the last decade, that's led to a lot of job losses, less money in the area, and ultimately less people being able to afford to buy. And at the same time, you've got a lot of people also then looking to sell their homes for the same reason. And that's what's pushed prices down so much. You know, this is a good example of why it's so important to understand the areas you're buying in, so that if you're buying in an area where there is a diverse range of industries, job prospects, great schools, facilities, it's likely the area should continue to thrive. But if you buy in areas that is largely dependent on one industry or near one major employer, and that industry or employer disappears from the area, that could then have a massive knock-on effect on house prices, as we've seen in Aberdeen. Now, with the other 9 areas that did at least go up in value, the idea of making 20 to 35% over 10 years as a worst case doesn't seem that bad. But that is basically about a 2 to 3.5% return a year, which it's not the end of the world, but wouldn't you rather be seeing a lot more for your money than that? What would help me out a lot is if you comment below on the annual percentage returns you think are realistic to aim for in property, and I'll reply if I think it's a realistic percentage or not. But for me, with all of this analysis, I think we're looking at this all wrong. Yes, it's really important to understand which areas perform better than others, but the other things to bear in mind is I bet there are a lot of people out there that bought properties in the city of Aberdeen 10 years ago and that have actually made money even though house prices have dropped 15%. And I bet there are people that bought property in Waltham Forest that lost money over the last decade, despite the fact the area's average house prices have over doubled and are leading the UK in growth over the last 10 years. How? Because all of these figures are averages at the end of the day. Within that mix of properties in each area, there will be properties that performed better and properties that have performed worse. And the trick to be a successful property investor is to weigh up a mix of different things that can affect the value of your property going up or down. That, my friends, is the key to buying smart, and buying smart, you are protecting yourself against potential downsides. Check out my video where I go into this topic in a lot more detail. But the basics are, if you did invest in Aberdeen 10 years ago and prices dropped 15% on average, you can protect yourself by doing things like, 1, buy a property below market value. So if your property you're buying is worth 150,000 and you manage to purchase it for 127,500, a 15% discount below market value, and prices then drop 15%, you've not actually lost any money. And secondly, buying a property that you can add value to in some way. So doing things like renovating it, building extensions, splitting the titles, converting it into HMOs. So if, for example, you bought a property worth 150,000 for 127,500, and you also spent 10,000 refurbishing it, and that, for instance, added 30 grand of value, you've all of a sudden got a property that's cost you that 127.5 plus the 10,000 you spent on it, so 137.5 in total, but it is now worth 180,000, 30% more than you paid for it. So buying below market value, picking property you can add value to, will really help you create a lot of value in any property you're buying, so that if prices do drop, like they did in Aberdeen, you're protected against those shocks. But better yet, if they don't, and you pair this to also buying in a great growth area, then you're layering multiple things that increase the value of your property, so that it doesn't take you 10 years for your property to double in value, but maybe only a few years. So in conclusion, the secret to success in property is, as well as making sure you are buying in solid growth areas, you also need to be looking to negotiate a great purchase price below the market value, and that you're also looking to buy a property you can add value to in some way. You do those three things and you're in that winning 1% of property investors that see their money double within years, not decades. Don't believe me? Check out this video where I show a project I almost doubled in value within a year. Bye.